welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz Interview Series with New York jazz saxophonist Owen Broder. He grew up in Jacksonville, Florida, but he also had hometown ties to Detroit, Michigan, and Washington, D.C. His latest 2018 CD called Heritage, the American Roots Project, is paying homage to that whole vein of "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?" and it's some fine jazz listening. He got his bachelor's degree from the Eastman School of Music and a master's degree from the Manhattan School of Music, and his career is always heading in the right direction. So get to know him and dig this interview, my friends.
Owen, I love your music. Thank you for taking a minute out. It's an honor to speak with you, man. I appreciate it.
Hey, thank you for having me, man. It's nice to be able to chat with you.
So let's dive right in here. Let's talk about Heritage, the American Roots Project. This is a great album. There's a lot of, I don't know if you would call it non-jazz, but there's a lot of kind of rootsy textures that are going into your conceptualized level of jazz on this album. Talk to me about this project and how much it means to you.
The project is obviously a labor of love. The concept kind of grew out of, or I guess has been growing for almost 5 years now, just kind of out of the idea of taking originally what was the soundtrack of "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?" and arranging it for jazz groups. I co-lead a quintet called Cowboys and Frenchmen, and our first record we did an arrangement of "Man of Constant Sorrow," and that was kind of the first exploration of this concept. And we had a good time with that arrangement, and it kind of expanded into some other things. And so this project is kind of fleshing out that idea on the larger scale and digging into the various types of early American music that kind of came together to shape what became an American cultural identity.
So talk to me a little bit about your childhood. You grew up in Jacksonville, but you also have ties to Detroit and Washington, D.C. Talk to me about your childhood and how you got so involved with jazz.
That's right. So I was actually born in Detroit, or outside of Detroit, and when I lived there till I was 4 years old. And by the time I left, I started taking piano lessons, and I spent a couple years in Baltimore actually, but spent most of my life growing up in Jacksonville, Florida. And like I said, I started out on piano. I'm an only child, and so when the opportunity to join the school band came up, that was kind of an opportunity to play music with people. At that point, I learned the clarinet. My teacher at the time was a college student at the University of North Florida, and he was a jazz saxophonist. And so he had me working out of these George Gershwin songbooks, where in the books they had George Gershwin tunes, but also written solos. And so that was kind of my entree into the jazz world, and I really kind of took to that, and so he fostered that interest. And a couple years later, I really wanted to join the school jazz band. At that level, there's not really a position for a clarinet player, so he and a couple other mentors really encouraged me to pick up the saxophone. And that was so that's where the saxophone came in, and I continued kind of balancing the three for a few years, but then eventually gravitated really to saxophone, and I went on to a middle school and high school for the arts, went on to study at Eastman School of Music and Manhattan School of Music.
What do you remember from those years of going through formal education, like advice that you got that really has rung through pretty hard for you in your life up to this point?
I think I was in kind of a unique situation where I was really surrounded by some phenomenal musicians, and just kind of being a part of a community where at such a young age there were so many dedicated musicians. The schools that I went to, I was classmates with people like Jameson Ross and Alfonso Horn, and a few years ahead were Theo Croker, Bob Reynolds. From a very early age, I was kind of immersed in this community of really, really great players who were passionate about the music and passionate about studying the music and really digging into kind of the definitive recordings and being a part of a culture where digging that deep into the musical tradition, I think, was what shaped me. I think that was just kind of a unique part of growing up and what pushed me in the direction that I ended up going in.
You know, the one thing, too, is that you have your own groups. You're a part of other groups. You've got a quintet, and there seems to be a variety of what you do. Is that something that is a part of your educational backbone or a personal philosophy you have on how you perform your music?
You know, one of my kind of favorite memories of Eastman School of Music was that I had a few friends in particular who would put together these projects that really would only last for a concert. It was interesting because all of these bands that they would put together were so different, and it gave them an opportunity to explore a bunch of their different interests. And so that kind of struck a chord with me. And so, you know, with my own things, I do have different interests. You know, I don't want to just play one kind of music, and I feel lucky that even as a sideman, I'm kind of able to have my hands in a few different kinds of pies. And so with my own groups, I make an effort to really make them different and explore some different kinds of parts of the musical history.
The one thing that you've done, too, is you've performed all around, you know, the country, and you've been around the world. What do you learn from going to different regions and performing? How important it is for you to perform live?
Performing live is such a different experience than recording, and it's kind of, for me, it's why I do it. The energy, not only that the audience provides, but just kind of that in the moment energy that you get from playing with your peers and colleagues is really special and not something that can easily be recreated in a studio situation. I think I play with an Collins band, and she has such an eclectic set of music that in particular is really fun to see the audience reaction to. There's so much different stuff that there's really, there's something for everyone in that set. And so being able to talk with people afterwards and finding out what they really connected with is a really fun part of the process. Just kind of hearing what different people connect with, and like you said, in different parts of the country, different parts of the world. And like I said, with her set in particular, because there's so much different stuff, that lends itself to some really great conversations.
It seems up to this point in your career, you've had a pretty good mix of, you know, getting out and playing at festivals and playing live. You've had good radio play, and lots of good things have happened with players you've been around. How do you feel about your career?
I'm excited about it. I feel like I'm doing what I want to be doing. I'm playing the music that I want to be playing, and I'm playing it with people who I really enjoy being around as people. You know, I just feel lucky to have a community that I call friends and get to make music that I really like. I feel like, you know, I moved to New York 5 years ago, or 5.5 years ago now. It's a process. It's a process kind of building a career, and I'm just kind of encouraged by the way things are going. I'm able to make my own music in a way that I really am proud of, and I'm able to play with people who I really enjoy.
What kind of jazz shows have you witnessed that have made a profound impact on you and how you view jazz?
And my favorite kind of concert is something that's really innovative, whether it's innovating with instrumentation or crossing genres in one way or another, or, you know, the format of the band. You know, one of my favorite people to go hear is Matt Wilson. Every band that he does, you know, like we were talking about a few minutes ago, every band he does is completely different than his other bands, but they're just so marked by his kind of joyful approach. You know, his Honey and Salt project, for example, is he integrates the poetry, or he integrates the aspect of poetry and kind of builds songs from that. And it's all of the music is so much fun to listen to. The way that he presents it is really innovative, and, you know, of course, he has the Arts and Crafts and the Christmas Trio and so many other groups that are all very unique in the way that they present themselves and the music that they play. And those are the kinds of concerts that really inspire me to kind of dig deep in my own thought process and figure out what hasn't been done yet. What do I have to offer that, number one, like I said, hasn't been done yet, but also still feels personal and sincere, you know, coming from me. You know, there are projects that it's easy to kind of or maybe not easy, but it's possible to come up with these ideas that maybe are great ideas on their own, but just don't necessarily come off as sincere or appropriate for people that are presenting them. But the ones that I think are really successful are completely derivative of the personalities of musicians presenting it.
So let me ask you this. If you could get into a time machine, the DeLorean pulls up in front of your house and you can go back in time and witness a show, where are you going? Who are you going to see?
Man, that's a great question. And I don't know if there's a year that I could go to. Although I do, baritone saxophone is a big part of what I do. I'm happy to be doing it kind of outside of the context of big band. One of my heroes is Harry Carney, whose approach to the Barry I think is not really being represented right now. There's kind of a more aggressive sound that is associated with the Barry, and Harry Carney's just kind of beautiful, lush, warm sound is less common. And so I think I would love to go hear that straight from the source.
Why do you love jazz?
I love jazz because of the conversational nature of the music, the looseness of it, the ability to kind of be in this space with your bandmates and express yourself as a soloist and really have everything that you do be marked by your own personality. Be able to share that with everyone else who's doing the exact same thing. I think there's a certain vulnerability about it that really makes it a special experience every time. When everyone's putting all of themselves into the music, it's just an honest and very fun way of expressing yourself with people.
Everyone has a version of you, your family, your friends, coworkers, anybody that you buys your music, but who do you think you are? You're the one piloting the ship. Who do you think you are?
That's a really interesting question. I just think of myself as someone I think like anyone, I'm just trying to figure out what I have to offer in a sincere way, like we were talking about. I know that I don't have everything figured out, but I'm always working on it. And I just think of, I think of myself as a work in progress, but happy with where I am.
I think that's a great way to wrap everything up. Owen, thank you for taking a minute out.
Thank you, man. I look forward to meeting you.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to yet another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in Florida, Washington, D.C., New York, Kansas City, and spots all over the globe, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Owen for his time and his music. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.